Hi everyone, this is Erin Thompson with Everyday Expressions, and I'm thrilled to be participating in the Altenew Educator Blog Hop, where we're celebrating heroes for all that they do to help keep us healthy and safe in the world today. So today, I'm sharing with you some simple watercolor techniques to give you stunning backgrounds and pretty florals. For the background, we're going to use the Floral Shadow stamp set from Altenew and the Tranquility set of inks. From lightest to darkest, the inks are in Misty Morning, Cloudy Sky, Nimbus, and Dark Night. And I'm using Bristol Strathmore Smooth cardstock for this background. It's a heavyweight cardstock that can take a lot of ink, a lot of water, and really a lot of abuse. And it's perfect for this kind of simple watercolor background. So I begin with the lightest color, Misty Morning, and one of the stamps from the stamp set. I put it on an ink block, ink the stamp, and then from about 6 inches away from the stamp, I mist it or spray it lightly with 1 spritz of water. Then I go directly to paper, hold it there for about 4 or 5 seconds to really give the water and the ink time to soak into the paper. And then I lift it off and then ink it again. Lots of times you'll see that I work in sets of 1s, 3s, 5s, the basic art concept of odd numbers, especially if I'm building a floral or a background using leaves, such as in this case, because it's just more visually appealing. So I'm building from the lightest color to the darkest color, moving from stamp to just kind of configure a background that I think looks pleasing. You'll also notice in using the lightest color first and then moving through darker colors, it gives the perception of depth. The lighter colors in the background building to the darker colors as they would look if they were more forward in a picture. So then once I've stamped all of the leaves that I like, then I move on to re-inking over top of that and blending with the lighter inks, moving to darker with blending brushes. And I'm just, once again, this is another way of building depth and interest in the background. And then finally, I move to Dark Night. I'm using a blending brush that's probably about a 1/2 inch wide to 1 inch long. One of the smaller blending brushes if you have a complete set. And these are great for just adding ink right along an edge. You aren't using a big brush that will go too far into your picture. It just gives a nice kind of interesting look to the edge. Then you'll see I'm just doing the basic spritzing, drying a little bit, dabbing up with a paper towel water to give a water droplet effect. And I actually do this twice. Now you'll see that I'm dabbing some of the Dark Night ink onto an acrylic block. I'm adding water, and I'm just taking a watercolor brush and getting a splatter effect. Then I'm using the Antique Silver Shimmer Spray from Altenew, and make sure you shake that up first. There's a lot of residue at the bottom, and then I'm just kind of tapping that off to get some splatter in that silver color. It gives a nice effect. Then I added a little bit more ink around the edges. I decided I wanted a little bit more depth. And now I'm moving on to stamping my florals. For this, I'm using the Altenew Simple Beauty stamp set. And you'll see I'm using one of the darker inks. I think I used the Nimbus. I don't think I went with the darkest color because I didn't want to use black. I thought this beautiful blue-gray ink would look perfect with the Pocket Full of Sunshine yellows. So you'll see what I did was I put this in my Misty and I actually stamped it twice to make sure that I had a nice, crisp, clear stamped image. Then I used an anti-static tool, and I actually then used an embossing ink and covered it with a clear embossing powder and then heat set it. By doing this, now I'm going to do some other simple stamping and watercolor techniques that now my dark ink, which can be water reactive from Altenew, will stay in place and will not blend with the yellows and give me a muddy color. Now my yellows will stay bright and vibrant, and yet I'll be able to watercolor and blend with them. So now I've got the solid stamp, and one of the tricks I like to do to soften ink stamping is that I use a finger dauber, and you'll see I'm starting with the lightest colors for the solid stamp, and I actually remove some of the ink with the finger dauber from the stamp before stamping it. And this just lets me control the amount of ink that's going onto the stamped image. And then you'll see sometimes I need to add more, and I can use the ink on the finger dauber to place it right there on the stamped image. So by using the finger dauber, it kind of softens it and just helps me control the amount of ink there. Then what I'm doing is using a water brush and going in to move around some of that ink. It moves very well on this Bristol Strathmore smooth paper, and I'm moving it to the edges to give that soft watercolor effect. And then I'm also leaving some lighter highlights, blending in the darker colors. The ink colors in Pocket Full of Sunshine go from lightest to darkest, and I first stamped with Citrus Burst, then moved on to Fresh Lemon, Maple Yellow, and then finally Honey Drizzle is the darkest color. And that's what I use for the shading. And then you'll see I used that a couple of times. I blended around with the water brush and then stamped it again with just the detailed layered stamp from Altenew to give it that final kind of crisper effect there. So I think it all worked out really well to give it a nice, simple watercolored look. Then I move on to the extra flower, and I repeat all of those steps. Next, I added in some of the Nimbus, and I just used my Misty as a palette. I used my water brush and dabbed in some color, and you can tell I'm using also a paper towel to dab up excess and to clean off my brush. And now I'm just adding shadows into the leaves that go along with the flowers. So now I'm bringing forward some of the blue grays that we used in the background, and I really like how this came out. And there you see I'm dabbing up with the paper towel. If my water brush has it's a little bit too wet, or my paper gets a little bit too wet, or I get color somewhere that I don't like it, just use a paper towel and dab it up. And it's almost like it erases it and you can start over. Or it just removes some of the water if you get a little bit too much here and there. You can also see that I'm actually just using the lines from the stamp itself to guide where my shading will go. It makes it so simple that even I am not an expert watercolorer by any means, but in this it almost looks like I have more ability than I honestly do. And I love this effect. So then I've just taken some of the darkest color, I'm going into the middle, and you can see it's kind of hard to pick up there because I've used the embossing powder and it's covered a lot of the detailed stamp there in the middle. So you'll see that I try to go in with some of the darker color to add in some darker shading. And what I do next is you'll actually see that I put the middle part of the flower stamp onto an acrylic block, and now I'm trying to stamp it and get a darker color. What I could have done was used something like Nuvo drops or something like that and gone in with the black to fill that in and get it even darker if I had really wanted to. Now you'll see I actually used the coordinating die and I cut out those primary flowers, that large bundle there. And then you'll see I stamped some of the extra flowers, leaves that go along with the stamp, and you just have to place the die in the correct spot, run it through, and then just trim off the excess to get those exact leaves that you like. And now you can see I'm just going in, I decided to do another flower, and just the one little set wasn't enough. I wanted one more, so that you see I have the 3 flowers there. And so I colored those in exactly watercolored those in exactly the same way, die cut it out, and then fussy cut to just have that one floral. And then I stamped all of the extra leaves in the Tranquility colors. And now I'm just taking my water brush and the ink that we've stamped there to once again kind of smooth that out and give it the watercolor look. The sentiment I used on this card worked perfectly here, and it's from the Paint a Flower Poppy And that's the sentiment right there. And it says that we're grateful. And I just thought that was perfect for giving thanks to our heroes. And you'll see that I used the Obsidian ink from Altenew, and that's a fabulous pigment ink. Gives a nice detailed crisp stamp almost every single time. It's just perfect for sentiments. It's my go-to. Now I'm just trimming the excess so that the card will sit correctly. I add a few drops and that finishes the card. Isn't it so pretty? I love how this came out. Those blue grays were perfect with that yellow. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.